So for today's webinar, I will welcome one of my newest trainers to the Academy to you. Before I do, we'll give people another minute or so to jump on. Those of you who don't know myself yet, and I see many familiar faces who I've met a couple of times all over the world. Those of you who have never met me before, my name is Claudia Winkler. I am based here in home office now in Austria at the moment. I'm a lawyer by background, but 6 years ago, I have decided to jump ship. I did a postgraduate in the United States at Harvard Law School, where they teach the Harvard Negotiation Project. And ever since that year at the LLM, basically things have changed for me drastically, because I realized that so much more, or let me reframe that, the skills that you're building are all a combination of things, and you can achieve so much more if you put negotiation skills on top of it, because subject matter expertise can only get you so far, because nowadays it's a super competitive environment. I know India has tougher entrance exams getting into national law school than it will ever be hard to get into Harvard Law School. I don't know by what factor, I think at least 10, but the world is getting more and more competitive, and subject matter knowledge only gets you so far. And the people I saw thriving the most, especially during that time in the US, were the people that understood that it's just as important how you deal with things. The how you work became just as important as the what you know at a certain level of your career. And that starts earlier and earlier. So 6 years ago, I decided to quit law as a lawyer. And ever since, I've been traveling the world running negotiation workshops for lawyers. So I spend a lot of time in pretty much all of your countries, depending on where it's summer at the moment. I've been quite selfish. I go to where the sun is if I don't get locked down in Austria during the wrong month of the year. So that's typically my schedule. For today, though, we will have a new trainer that will be holding this webinar on optimizing your outcomes with the Harvard negotiation principles. And I'm very proud to introduce to you for this purpose Svitlana Kalitsun, a lawyer from Vienna, over 10 years of experience working with some of the biggest law firms and some very big companies in the finance industry. She's been doing a huge share of negotiations within the law firms, within the companies. So she'll have a lot of things to share with you, a lot of interesting insights to tell. About the webinar, we're going to take about, she's going to jump on in a moment, and we're going to take about 45 minutes for the content. While she's speaking, feel free to post questions in the chat, anything that comes to your mind. Obviously, feel free to react to our questions, very importantly so, but also anything else that comes to your mind, post it in the chat. We might pick it up, Svitlana might pick it up during the presentation, but more likely we will answer the questions afterwards, because we will also have some time afterwards for a Q&A. So just jot them down and we'll get to them later. Okay. If there is no other questions, let me see if I can manage my technology here. I've muted everyone. Let me see if we can bring Svitlana online. Svitlana, can you hear us?
Yes, hello, I can hear you, Claudia.
Ah, fantastic. Can everyone see Svitlana? Green jacket. Okay, you can also click on her picked image, and if you click the 3 dots next to her, there is an option that says, must be something like pin it down. In German, it's called anheften, which is a beautiful German word, but there is an option that allows you to pin her video to your screen, so you don't have various people jumping in and out as they come and leave the chat. Right, Svitlana, over to you.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Hello to everyone from my side. As Claudia has introduced me nicely, I am from Austria. I'm a lawyer here, and I love to negotiate. And I'd like to start with a question. Wait. Who of you likes to negotiate? Please say yes or no in the private chat, in the chat. So I see many yeses, sometimes yes, no, yes. Yes, 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 wow.
Fan club here.
Absolutely. Yes, but often feels uncomfortable. Now we're getting to if I win. Very good. Thank you for the input. So thank you for the input. Anyways, not really. We're getting to the nose. We'll open with open-minded people. Oh, very good answer. It depends. Like every lawyer would actually answer. So thank you for your answers. And I would like to tell you that this question has been asked to many, many people in different countries and also different age ranges. And it ranges between 10 and 20% usually that people like to negotiate. The rest of the majority, 80 to 90%, doesn't like to negotiate. So I do feel like we hear all negotiators, and I'm happy to be in this very nice round here. So, but back to the research. The research says that we don't like to negotiate, and a majority of people don't like to do that because they assume they might lose. As I saw in the comments here, there is also a possibility to lose, and our assumption is often that we might also be weaker or less experienced, or the English language, or maybe the language that you're negotiating in is stronger at your counterpart and so on. So the difficulties to face a negotiation are usually lie in between of us. And as soon as these difficulties and assumptions kick in, it's very difficult to lose them and to get rid of them. And it's also all about the communication. The assumption is also quite often that there is only one solution and there are also the limits. So to sum up this all, it's very difficult to overcome the assumptions, and it's also very hard to work with the people when we assume that there is a win-lose scenario. And we also often think that there are the limits that we can achieve. So we just come to the limits and that's it. So in this series, I would like to talk to you about the Harvard negotiation workshop and Harvard negotiation techniques, because they think it's a little bit different. The world looks a little bit different, and they give you a different approach that might help you in your negotiation throughout the life and also your legal studies. So let me give you an example for traditional bargaining. The traditional bargaining is on the other side, one of the negotiation ways. So there are like two negotiations: the traditional bargaining and also the interest-based negotiation that we are going to talk afterwards. So the traditional bargaining usually looks like this. Imagine yourself wanting to take a cab drive, and you go to the taxi driver and ask how much is it right, and he says, for example, 600, and you say, what, 600? I paid 300 last time I took the same ride for the same distance. And he would say, well, only because you just asked, I'll give you like 500, so there will be some kind of a final offer. And I would say, no, well, actually, I paid 300 yesterday. I might even ask someone else. I maybe walk out, so I'll threaten. And the taxi driver would actually go, no, the final offer would be 400. And I would say, okay, then 400, that's it, deal. Or maybe there is no deal, and we just leave the room and go somewhere else. So that's the traditional bargaining that is actually that we all do in our usual life, but this is the way that we like to not to do in the usual negotiation when negotiating at the table with our counterparts. Another explanation of the traditional bargaining would be the piece of cake, a slice of cake. I cannot tell about your cultures, but in my family, if there is a cake on the table, then everyone jumps in and tries to get the bigger piece. So that's more or less also the explanation of the cake situation, that we are thinking about 100%, and then we get a piece of that. So it's like, if I get more, then you get less. And in a different way, if you get more, then I get less. The interest-based negotiation that we're going to talk about today is actually a little bit different. the interest-based negotiation introduces us to so many layers to this whole negotiation thing that we feel like we grow the pie. And by growing the pie, we also grow the slices, the pieces of the cake that we get. So let me introduce you to Professor Roger Fisher, the professor at the Harvard University. And he has started his research on negotiation at Harvard Law School when in the 70s, when there were not that much research, there were not that many ideas on negotiating. And he started this Harvard project where our host Claudia has taken part. And it's a very, very interesting project that is still going on, and they still educate their lawyers on this specific theme. So the interest-based negotiation was also published in a book. I also have it here. It's called Getting to Yes, Negotiating an Agreement Without Giving In. So that's a new cover. You have also there the other cover. That's the book which starts all the negotiations. So it's still used as a starting point for negotiation, and it introduces to you the Harvard method. And Professor Fisher tells you that there are four different steps to become a great negotiator. So the first step would be to focus on the interest and not on the positions. The second is to separate people from problems, to be soft on people, hard on problems. The fourth pillar is create multiple options. And the fourth is use objective criteria. We will be addressing all of the four steps, and I'd like to start with the first one. So focusing on interest. Focusing on interest means that we should be focusing on something that motivates us to do what we're doing. So on the other side, there are like two layers to that. The positions are usually the things that we want. Think of a child, for example, like on this picture. The child will definitely tell you if it wants candy. So imagine yourself just standing in front of the candy shop, and there would be a little child, and the child would say like, "I want the candy." So that's more or less the position. I think you get the point. I usually take this picture because yes, the position is more or less, I want this, that's it. But the negotiation should be about the interests, and the interests. So this is the position, and the interests are underlying there. The interests are actually our motivators, our needs, our goals, our concerns or fears, whatever that is. There is more to the position. And we, as a good negotiators, we need to look for those needs and goals. Because, for example, if someone is negotiating for better salary in his law firm, then maybe he or she needs a better salary to pay off the loans that they got for the flat that they have just bought. Or maybe they have a goal to become a partner at this law firm. Or maybe they have the concerns that the window to become a partner is going to shut down soon or something. And maybe they fear that they might be locked at home for the quarantine, and they actually want to proceed quicker. And there are many other motivations. Maybe there are some outstanding events happening in the lives of people, and there are so many different layers to that I will be telling you that in a graph. I'm quite a visible person, so that's why I like drawing. So if you imagine the position, the thing that we want is the top of the iceberg. And to get this information, you usually ask the question, what do you want? You usually get this information from your client pretty quickly, because if your client addresses you at the law firm, then they say, I want to sue this and that person, or something happened, something bad happened, I want to have it reversed, and whatever that is. This piece of information you usually get very quickly, so that's given. But as in every iceberg, there is deep waters, and there is the rest the iceberg, which is bigger and massive, and it's unknown. So our idea is to dive in and to look for those interests of the people. And they usually answer to the question, why do you want something? So if a client comes into your office and says he or she wants to sue someone, then we should usually ask the question, why do you want that? What exactly would you like to have? And so on. So that's a very specific idea to ask. Not just take the information that they give you as a given. We've got to be investigative and also look behind the facade. Let me also show that to you in a different way. I have brought two cases today, and one of those is actually the example how this model of Harvard negotiation and also interest-based negotiation works on this dispute settlement cases. So imagine a Greek producer has came up with the idea of creating a very interesting jam recipe. Let's say it's made out of apricot cream and feta cheese. He registers the trademark everywhere in Europe, but in Spain. And somehow another Spanish producer also creates this kind of a jam, produces it, and also puts it on the market. And somehow this special Spanish jam makes it to the Greek supermarket chain and is been sold there. So the Greek producer files the suit against the supermarket chain, claiming losses in millions of euros, because first they have advertised the product, and second they have sold the product that is the cheaper substitute to his product. This dispute gets even bigger. They get an injunction. The Spanish products are taken all out and confiscated by the court order. They even start the criminal proceedings. So the big mess is going over there. And as we can imagine, this case also comes to the lawyers, and the lawyers from the two parties come together and try to negotiate the settlement. And you can imagine that it goes back and forth, and they don't go anywhere, because on one side you have the producer who claims millions of euros for the damage, and on the second side you have the supermarket chain, that isn't just not willing to pay this much money. So things look pretty desperate sometime, until one lawyer from the supermarket chain steps in and offers a very interesting deal. And I'd like to share this deal with you, because I think it's very, very specific. So he offers, from the supermarket chain perspective, to include this Greek product into the stores all over Europe and to sell it there, to give them the best shelves in the market that they have, like first class shelves. They would promote the product, and they would even give the significant purchase guarantee for that. And on top of that, they would even take over the costs for the lawyers and for the court fees. So all in one, it's a fantastic deal. And of course, as you can imagine, the Greek producer agrees to that. And this huge dispute gets solved easily within a few weeks of hashing out the business relationship ideas. So let me give you an overview how this happened and why this has happened. So we're drawing our icebergs again. On the one side, you have the position, the damages. So that's the peak of the iceberg, and the damages were identified by the Greek producer. There was a second position of the supermarket chain that has stated that there is no damages, and they don't want to pay for the damages. The lawyers have first tried to bridge over the positions, and they didn't find a solution. So what happened here? They needed to look at the interests of each other. So dive into the deep waters. And as we can imagine, the interest of the Greek producer was to recover the losses because they sold less, and also they would like to increase the sales. I can imagine that they also thought of becoming on top of a different product because the Spanish product is still on the market. There is also, however, the mutual interest, as you see in the different color. Both firms wanted to protect their reputation. They didn't want to pay for the lawyers and for the lawsuit costs. And they also didn't want to include the media. So they wanted to do it quickly. And the position of the supermarket was to solve everything quiet and cheap as possible. So out of this both interests, we have interest of the Greek firm, of the producer, the mutual interest, and also the interest of the supermarket. And out of that, the lawyers came up with the options. And as I told you before, there are different options, and they are all great options. And just to sum up, this is a very good example for understanding how the business works. And that's the beauty also of the negotiation, because when going into the room, you sometimes don't know whether you're going to achieve an agreement. You hope for that, you prepare for that, but you don't know what exactly the outcome is going to be. And in this specific case, they started in a very, very, very adversarial position where they had a lot of costs coming up, and also long procedures were looking at them. And on the other side, during the negotiation, they turned out to be to start a new business and become a business partners. So that's absolutely big shift from adversarial to friendly relationship that also turned out to be very productive. So I have brought also a second case with me to show you how negotiation works on the contract negotiations. So I'd like to ask you a few questions in between. So maybe if you'll write some ideas down, and maybe some arguments, some numbers that will help you to answer the question, that would be very nice. I hope you have a pen or a phone or something close to you. Well, that's a second case. It's not a dinner, it's just a case on a French fries. So imagine an inventor has invented a machine that would cut potatoes into fries, them, and bring it to the table in 1 minute only. So from the raw potato to the crispy French fries on your table, it would just take 1 minute only. And this company wanted to license the product and started a negotiation with a big manufacturer. The manufacturer was also interested in the product, and they had the power to mass produce the product, and also to sell it to the fast food chains. So big negotiation going over. There are many ideas. Great. I see that some people like this idea. They negotiate back and forth until they get to the point where the inventor says, I cannot accept anything less than 7%. And the manufacturer says, I cannot offer you anything more than 4.5%. And you have this shift. They don't have a deal. At this point, they have left the rooms, and the negotiation broke down. But as you might imagine, there are some trained negotiators in this world, and they took this opportunity and engaged a neutral person to talk to each other, to talk to different parties. So the neutral person will go to the talk to everyone, and first went to the innovator and asked, what are the reasons, and what is this about the number of 7%? So I'd like to draw again the icebergs, and we have the position of 7%. That's the inventor, and another position of 4.5%. That's the inventor. You see, there is also no deal yet, but we still need to look to the interest. So this neutral person asks, what is it about? And he finds out that this inventor firm needs to repay their loans because they needed to fund this whole production of the firm. They also needed the money for establishing a new health insurance program, which has recently become actual and necessary for them. And they were also concerned about the liability cases, because in the US, where this case has occurred, the liability case might even destroy a small business and make it go bankrupt. So these are the interests of the inventor. So the neutral goes to the manufacturer and also talks to the manufacturer. What is the reason? Why is 4.5% the maximum what you can give? And he finds out that they are about to go to the stock market. They have an IPO, an initial public offer, coming up, and they want to attract the investors, but with the number of 7%, they fear to deter the investors because it looks back on the book. So, and in between, you see there is also in the green, there is also a mutual interest. There is an interest to get the license, because one wants to give the license, the second one wants to get the license. And here you are. I have a question to you. With having this information at your hands, what options, what solutions would you offer to these two parties? Please write it in the chat and I'll vocalize it for you. Offer IPO option to the inventor. Yes, this is also very interesting. The producer can provide stock options to the investor. Very good. Perhaps a staged payment. Perhaps a staged payment. As you might think about the case before, there were also some possibilities like purchase guarantees, promotions, some benefits. Great, great. I have here many ideas how to do that. Selling of license if one wants to sell, wants to buy. Company pay to inventor loan amount, insurance amount, and liability to return for deal. 4.5. Very good. Okay. A one-time time lump sum fees to the inventor along with the royalty. Very good. The percentage of royalty can stay 4.5 in the books. The producer can get the license and then inventor offer 6%. I like your ideas. Keep it coming. We are getting creative here. I feel like in the beginning it was a little bit difficult to get in this mood, but right now I feel like we are here in the same boat, and it's very, very nice to hear that you have come with many great ideas. And you actually have offered the right answers. I congratulate you, because there were options would be many, and they are usually more than the interest and positions are together. So for example, they can offer a lump sum and then a smaller percentage after the IPO is over, after the firm has also went to the stock market. They can offer, the manufacturer can offer to pay back the loans of the inventor. And even if that looks good on their books, it might also a good point to text deduce these depths from the text. The manufacturer also can offer to take over the liability cases, because as you can imagine, a liability situation for a small firm might end up in a bankruptcy, but for bigger firms, they just tell you, yeah, get in the line. They often have very good securities and very good insurance for that. There is also another possibility to include into insurance plan, include the inventor's staff into the insurance plan of the big firm, of the manufacturer. It's a big asset for the inventors, but for the manufacturers it wouldn't do any difference. And they also can start with a smaller percentage and then raise it bit by bit after the IPO is over. So as you can see, there are many different solutions that we can find in the opportunities. And the idea of this case was actually that you will understand that there is something else than just what the people are asking. There is not just a position. You need to dive in to find the interest, and it's usually very difficult to figure that out, because the interest may not be so obvious as in this case. For example, sometimes people don't even know exactly what is the interest, or they don't want to tell you, or they are not aware of that. So our role as lawyers, as great negotiators, is to talk to them, to ask the right questions, and also to ask many questions. So we get the interest. And as soon as you get the interest, as soon as you know what it's about, and it's very important to think of the interest of your counterpart, because only then, when you know what the counterpart needs, then you can combine everything to a good solution. And just to be honest, as soon as you find out the interest, your work as a negotiator only starts. But it's a great work. I can tell you that. So I hope that the summary of the case was interesting to you. There are many different different aspects to focus on the interests, and there are many ideas of that also in the books and online courses. But we need to proceed and to go to the second pillar, to the second step of the recipe of Professor Roger Fisher, and that would be to separate people from problems. And this is also a very important part that is that's Professor Roger is speaking, that we sometimes mix the problem with the people and forget that even if we have a negotiation with a very fancy firm, or have a negotiation with a bank, or have an margin acquisition with a different country, or I don't know, even if we negotiate with Coca-Cola or something, it's never the firm that we're dealing with. It's always a person, and this person always have the feelings and emotions. They sometimes feel differently, and it's very important to focus on the person. So this part is very important. In this part is very important to focus that we need to be soft on people but hard on the problems. That's why we need to divide them completely. And the first thing that is actually important is the relationship to the person. So that's why it's important to build up the trust in the relationship, and just think about yourself, think about your previous negotiations and maybe conflicts. I hope that you don't have any, but yeah, if there are two people that then the conflicts are possible. If you have a good relationship with the person, then you are most likely to have to do a deal with them. If you understand each other, you're most likely to have to do a deal with them. But if there is someone that you cannot get along with, then it might be a big issue. And it is very, very important to minimize the difficulties between those with those people, because still a person needs a role. Person needs to be need the feeling that this person is listened to, that they have that they make their own decision, that they have the role, that they have a status, that they are important, and secure in the situation, in a conversation with you. So that's why the separate people from problems is very important, because the issue that we have, that we need to address on, that is very important to negotiate with, we don't let to this issue to spill over to the relationship. That's why I would really suggest that you actively look at chit chat as a very important tool. First, including myself, well, actually myself, I used not to like to chit chat at all. I felt like, well, come on, how many times can you can you talk about the weather during the day? Or you know, sometimes you just meet and then you just don't know what to talk about and so on. So I would keep my small talk very small, and then just leave to somewhere else. But guess what? It is very important to the people to talk to you, even though it's just a chit chat. So if you are negotiating somewhere else and it's appropriate, then then it would be nice to address a compliment on the environment of the law firm. Maybe if that's appropriate. If someone comes and visits you and negotiates with you, you might want to offer a good seat in the conference room, or the refreshment. If they don't have a pen, you just give them a pen or something. These are the smaller things that also turn on the reciprocity in us, in people. Because if you are nice to a person, the person can only be nice to you. And if they're not nice to you, then it's harder for them to say no to you. So that's why always separate people from problems. Be soft on people, but hard on problems. The second step to become a great negotiator is to create multiple options. And this is when I would like to remind you about the iceberg that we were creating. You had the position, you had the interest, and out of that you would create many, many, many options. And they can expand your cake if you would like to think of it. And for doing that, it is very important also to know that sometimes being creative is difficult, but it's actually a limiting belief. They sometimes tell us in the law school that you need to act like a law, and you need to apply the law, and if this then that, and if this then that. But no, lawyers are very, very, very creative. And I know many creative people, including musicians, they say lawyers are creative. So listen to that. You just need to know where are the barriers, and the barriers are usually come with the social environment, and also just with the thinking. So the barriers might be that we believe that there is only a single answer, or this situation of win and lose that I addressed before. We try to find the solutions that there is win-win to every party. That's why we talk about interest. That's why we spend so much time with the counterpart. That's why we address so much of our empathy to the other, so we can have an outcome and to create the win-win solutions. And we sometimes think that there is only one solution, but there are many solutions. And it's very important to know that there is the world out there that we don't know. That's why it's important to talk to people. The more people you talk, the more options you will get. And it's also very important to first listen to the counterpart, and then drill down to the interest. Because if you don't have the interest, if you don't have the essence of the decision making of your counterpart, then you will not be able to address this essence of the decision making. So stay present, listen, ask questions, drill down to the interest, and then you will have the essence of everything. And the fourth step is to use objective criteria. And is my favorite tool to deal with the bullies, because unfortunately there are still some people that are not as kind as yourself and myself. Yourself and myself. And the objective criteria is absolutely the thing where if you feel like you're pushed, if there is something that say like, dali, you've got to to do this and that, and there is some pressure, or you need to meet the deadline or something, then I usually put an objective criteria on the table, and I say, no, this is not true. And the objective criteria are different. For example, in a sales, there are such things like list price, like market prices, market values. So if you get bullied in this situation, then you can say, for example, if you sell a car, a used car, let's take this example, you will then you will use the price, you will research on the internet and everywhere where you can get information, what is the value of the car as new, what is the value of the car as used, as 10 years old or something. Then there is maybe a list price to that. If we're talking about the products, then there are norms, standards, there are some procedures. And in the law, we also have the precedents and also the fair trial and fair procedure. Because in the end, it is important to have the order and to have the frame. So in this specific frame, it's not limiting. Sometimes people feel like a frame is limiting. No, but the frame, if you use it correctly, you can use it as the border to deal with the pressure, deal with the bullies, and deal with the difficulties. And by introducing the objective criteria, standards, or prices, or norms, and makes you more believable and makes your point fair, because you are using the objective criteria, not your own subjective criteria. So to sum up, the interest-based negotiation is very nicely explained here in the Getting to Yes book. I warmly suggest you to read that, because it's a very nice one. It's a thin one, so that's a nice book. And there are 4 steps to become a great negotiator and negotiate an agreement without giving in. So the first one is to focus on interest and not on the positions. Dive in, get information, and be nice to people. Separate people from problems. Don't let the anger at the problem spill over to the person. Person is completely different. Be nice to the person. The best outcome of a your adversarial counterpart. I hope that it's going to be the outcome of every negotiation in your practice. There is also the third part, which is create multiple options. As I told you, dive in, get up, and then you create multiple options. And the fourth is to use objective criteria. All of these are the tools that I'm giving to you, and I hope it very much. And I invite you also to use these steps in your everyday life, and also any negotiation that you're part in. And you can use it in your private life and also in your professional life. So thank you very much. I have the last slide, which is get in touch. Some of you have, and we also have some special learn from home coupon of 20% off for the whole master negotiation course that is explaining more details to the great negotiation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Svitlana. Wow, that was a lot in 45 minutes or less. This is basically the whole Getting to Yes story, spoon-fed to you in as short and effective and loyally applicable as anyone possibly could. Thank you so much again. Many of you have already been in our Master Negotiator course. I recognize names and faces from Australia, from Kenya, from India. Those of you who have not been in there and feel like wanting to learn more about how to negotiate as a lawyer and learn that from home now, there is this 40-hour course that we have been running for the last 3 years, where we've had hundreds and thousands of lawyers in there. If you want to make use of the time now, this is the coupon, the Learn from Home coupon, that gets you that 20% discount. Meanwhile, what are the things that you're taking away now? Let's see what you've kept, and then let's see what questions you have. What are your first impressions? What's the things that you feel, oh, this is something I want to try out tomorrow? And what is some of the questions that maybe you had while Svitlana was walking you through? Das war sehr gut. Dankeschön.
I think we have a question here from Dayan Vasi. Just a quick question. In some cultures, small talk is not considered worth the time. Places like Germany, what do you in such a situation to make them, what suggest, I think, in such situation to make them feel like we are listening? Thank you for that question. I'm originally from Ukraine, so yeah, I'm also from a different culture, and I live in Austria. I know what you mean. That cultures are fantastic. They are the colors to our lives, I do believe. And of course, there are some cultures that don't consider small talk worth the time. But my advice would be just still be bubbly, even though people don't answer to you. Sometimes they're so surprised, even in those specific countries, they're so surprised that they just don't answer whatever. But as long as you stay friendly and nice and bubbly and say who you are, where you come from, then you become not just a person from the street, you become Svitlana, you are a lawyer from Austria and you're originally from Ukraine. And you have been traveling to this and that country, and you might be applying for this and that specific thing that you need because your parents are about to go to their vacation and they needed the help or something, and then you or try to get their residency permit for different countries or something, then you become a person. And it's way more difficult to say no to a person that has a name, that has a parents, and that has a culture and background behind that. So my suggestion is definitely still keep talking and still stay bubbly.
Keep trying, yeah. I mean, you'll have to use your common sense. You will feel if people are finding this is too much, let's get to it. If you get a sense from the other person that they're getting impatient and they really want to get down to business, that's your clue to stop talking about the weather, because then you don't want to get people bored out. You don't want to have people get annoyed with too much small talk. But do always try at the beginning, and you'll pretty quickly see how comfortable or uncomfortable they are with too much small talk. But don't try and err on the too much side, because many, especially cultures here up in Northern Europe, we do too little of it. And research definitely shows that every minute you spend in socializing, in getting to know each other as a person, directly translates into how good a deal you will have in a negotiation. Okay, let's take another one. How do you deal with unreasonable negotiators? And from Nikhil, and Sai is asking, how would you tackle a negotiation where you're using interest-based negotiation, but the other side's using a positional negotiation, as being extremely rigid? Because I think these two questions actually go together very quickly. Do you want to start, Svitlana?
How would you tackle your negotiation when you are using interest-based negotiation, but the other side is using position negotiation, being extremely rigid? Ooh, it's a very good question. They sometimes use it on us, definitely, because even there are sometimes people that feel to be urged to do something completely different. If you are nice or something, they will pull against you or something. The advice would actually be to still keep talking to them and feel the borders, because if the person is not talking to you, is not answering to you, is not acting in an adequate way, then we also need to think about whether there will be a possibility to have a contract, to have an agreement with them. But sometimes they just try out some ideas. So I'll suggest to keep friendly, to use the objective criteria. They usually take them down, and if that doesn't work, then not to push.
Sometimes you might have to change the negotiator on the other side. But yeah, more importantly, so definitely stick with what Svitlana is saying. You need to keep doing what you're doing, because the most dangerous thing is if you have an aggressive, pushy negotiator on the other side, the instant reaction that's going to happen to each of us, if we get pushed, we push back. So the danger of that is not that the other side's pushy, but the danger is that I will push back. And in the moment I allow myself to become just as unreasonable and I start positional bargaining, then we're going down a spiral. The only chance you have in a negotiation with a bully or with someone that's very positional is not, you can't change the other person. You will never be able to influence who the other person is, but you can influence how you react to it. And that's the key thing. You need to stay with your tactic, with your interest-based negotiation strategy. You need to keep asking questions. You need to keep looking for interest. You need to keep creating options. You need to keep using objective criteria until you hopefully get the other side to come around. The danger is that they will drag you into their positional. And that's what we see all the time. The moment one side starts being pushy, the other side starts doing the exact same thing. It's a natural reaction. It's a chemical reaction. It's called mirror neurons. We react to people the way they treat us. So your best advice to pushy negotiators is that you have to stay an interest-based negotiator. That is your only hope. And it's harder than it sounds, because you know what happens when someone's pushing you. You want to fight back, but that bit of self-control is potentially the biggest negotiator skill anyone can have, keeping within your own powers and not letting you be pushed by the other side. Hire mediator, I love that one. So true. Sorry.
Another question here from Aisha Kwazi. She asks privately to me, in a situation where you are separating the person from problem, but the other side is overridden with ego and emotion, what can you do to do better in that situation? It's a little bit, it's not enough information to tell exactly what you should do, but definitely in this situation, if there's ego involved and emotions can be different. So if you have someone reacting to you aggressively, then the best idea and the best advice would actually to step aside a little, because the aggression and anger is usually very short emotion and they burn quite quickly. So those who scream at you, it's usually best just to shift a little bit. Don't take it personally, because sometimes there are sometimes people that really like to scream and they don't hear each other and themselves screaming. And the other emotions that you can have is also depends also on the outcome, but usually if separating people from problem, the most important thing I think in this situation is to listen to people and to let them talk, because if they feel hurt, if they feel that they made their own decision to tell you that whatever they are telling you, that if you just listen to that and whatever the information is, you just let them go with the flow, and then they will at some point end up with the effective idea. So it's not about yourself, it's about themselves. It's very important to make the point about themselves, and you just listen there. And every single time I'm there with a new client, or actually with every single client, every single time I am remembered that our profession is very, very psychological. It's more or less like a little bit like the therapist, because they come to you when it's like it's too late, everything hurts and everything's bad and they need to pay a big amount of money, they don't know what to do, everything has been delayed, and then you're there and they want to tell you the story. And yes, of course they're emotional, of course there are egos, it's difficult, but if you let them talk, you'll get through.
Ayushi is asking about if we can talk a bit more about objective criteria, because the negotiation process is very subjective. So where does that come from? So we had little time. Maybe you want to go into a bit more detail there?
To the objective criteria, yes, with pleasure. It always depends on the objective on the case where you are, because for example in the sales, just let's take the usual case or the easy case that I would like to sell my used car. The car is 10 years old and I want to find the best deal out of to have a best deal. So to use objective criteria before I put it on the market and say, I want the amount XY for this car, I need to do the research and also to find out what is the market price, what is the list price, what is the value of the car, what special features do I have in the car. Maybe there is a air conditioner that also way more valuable to that. Maybe that's an old timer, whatever it is. But there are many different things that change the value of the product, and it's very important to figure that out. It's also part of the preparation to the negotiation, to find out what different factors, outstanding factors that are not there, that they don't that you don't have on the table yet, that might influence the decision-making process.
So anything basically that's outside your own will, anything that is objective in the sense that other people could research it and they would find the exact same numbers. And then the way you would use it, maybe as a little example, if you were to go and buy a house, you would go to the seller and you would say, look, you're looking for a high price, I am looking for a low price. How about we spend some time figuring out together what would be a fair price for this house? And then you would have researched your objective criteria that's in your favor, and you might say the average dollar per square meter in this area is so and so. And the owner might say, this is what I bought it for, this is how much the value has been increasing. You would both add your objective criteria. And then obviously you're still negotiating about these objective criteria, but it takes you out of that battle of will that we saw at the beginning, the traditional street style bargaining, where one side starts really high, the other side starts really low, and then we bargain our way together. So that's how you use objective criteria. Okay, where are we? People don't usually like to divulge information as they feel like it might put them at a disadvantageous position. How can we overcome this problem? Get them to share more interests. Do you want to jump on that, Svitlana, or are you somewhere else? It's a long list now.
No. Yeah, it's a great list. Love it. Yeah, it's Aisha again. It's very interesting what you're saying. And yes, of course, it's sometimes difficult to tackle out the information it out of the nose sometimes. I mean, like, there is a saying in Germany that you that you get the information out of your clients. Absolutely, that's the problem, and it's more an issue, I would say. It's implied in the negotiation that you really need to do your homework, to prepare and to ask correct questions, and just count with just calculate with the situation that you might not have all the information, that you really need to be investigative, and just try your best.
So you've got to have the right questions, so you get the right information. One big mistake negotiators make, especially lawyers, is asking leading questions, even though in court we're being told not to. So a lot of lawyers will ask, so you're looking for 3,000, right? Or you are doing this and that, right? And that's not getting you any information. That's just confirming or denying your assumption. And maybe that's not even honestly answered by the other side. But the other thing that I am reading into your question is when you ask a question and the other side doesn't want to answer. So the problem is you need, or the secret is, you need to build trust. The other side's not going to tell you what they want to hear unless they trust you with information. How do you go about building trust quickly? You need to share some information yourself. You can't just be sitting there interrogating the other side, trying to get as much information from them as you can. You need to make the first step sometimes and decide what information you can share so they can trust you, because sharing information is simply the quickest trust builder that you have. So that's one way to try and get around this initial barrier of both people usually feeling, I don't want to share too much. Because for interest-based information, obviously information is the lifeline of your negotiation outcome. So the list has been scrolling down. That's also the technique to extract interest from the other side. You've got to ask questions, and you're only going to get answers if you are willing to share first, to answer Aditi's question.
Mm-hmm.
As a negotiator, how do I handle the person I'm myself negotiating on behalf, my client? If they are themselves riddled with emotion and an ego and unwilling to budge from their position, how can I consult them? Could you provide any tips for such situation? So the question is about, you're not only negotiating on one front. As a lawyer, you're not only negotiating with the other side, with the counterpart, but you're also negotiating with your client a lot of times because they have their very own perceptions of what their right should be or how the process should go. How do you negotiate that relationship? And it's very similar. I'll start on this if you don't mind. It's very similar to the negotiation you have with the other side, in fact. And thank you for raising that question, because many people miss the fact that this is the negotiation that's taking place behind your table. There's not just negotiation across the table. A lot of negotiation is behind your table. And you need to first get your client to understand what you are trying to do. You need to first get to the bottom of that iceberg that Svitlana showed you, that pyramid of why is this client really here? What do they really try to achieve? Because clients will bring you positions. Your client will come in and your client will say, sue this company. They have done so and so. But what they're not telling you is why exactly do they want to sue. I'll give you an example. This is a case that happened in the United States, where the United States Postal Service, so the snail mail company of the US, marched into their law firm and they wanted to sue a rock band, an indie rock band that had called themselves Postal Service and that had become really famous now. And the law firm, so they walk in, they say, sue this band, they're infringing our brand name. It's bad for our business. And normally, I often say to students, if this big company walks in and say, do you sue them? They say, jump, you say, how high, right? No, not right. You need to ask them, why? What are we trying to achieve? Because as you say, it might be ego, it might be they don't understand, it might be whatever principled, silly reason that they want to sue. So that law firm in this case asked them, talked them through, asked them why, what are they trying to achieve? And they made them realize that probably it is not the best for the United States Postal Service to sue the favorite rock band of the target group they're already having the hardest time to reach, millennials, which happen to be the big fan base of that band. So they advised them to not sue the rock band, and they ended up negotiating a contract where the band was actually promoting their CDs, a while back, promoting their CDs in the post office stores, and the post office was inviting them even to the annual party of the companies. They were playing there. The post office was selling the CDs at the office. The band was promoting the post office, this way around. So they asked, is this really beneficial for you? And that's all management of emotions and of egos, because people will bring these egos, will bring these emotions, and these are the actual interests, but they won't share that with you. They will just derive their position out of it, and they will share this position with you, the lawyer. So you're going to have trouble making them happy, because even if you get them what they ask you to get them, that position, they're not going to be happy, because it's just one position. It's just the one thing they came up with that could solve their problem. So that's something you need to walk them through just as much, and reality check with them. Is this, why are we trying to do this? What are you hoping to get out of this? What should we achieve? That was a really long answer for a short question. I'm sorry. Did you want to add anything to that?
No, I don't have an addition. I do think that you answered that beautifully. I have another question, actually. Mvi Mali, I hope that I'm pronouncing it correct, it's a beautiful name, is asking also a very important question. I am picking up the need or importance to have the emotional intelligence in big letters. Any advice to increase or improve one's emotional intelligence? And I can congratulate you to everyone here in the room. You are increasing your emotional intelligence right now. Yes, but that's not a joke, actually. It's a joke and not a joke. No, it's just by reading, just by thinking about emotional intelligence, by managing your negative emotions, by exploring yourself, by being mindful to your vocabulary, by practiced empathy, trying to switch the position and go in, try someone else's shoes, they say. Also to know, by knowing yourself and getting to know yourself better, you'll be learning a lot. And if you want a real an advice that you can do right now, you just go on academy.com, and we have just published a blog about the books that you can read about emotions and also negotiation and dealing with emotions, so you can get some concrete advice there too.
Anna is asking, dealing with different values and different cultures, would it be better to go to the facts first in order to create a common base? And I'm trying to make sense of the connection of these two sentences and trying to find out what you're trying to get at. How do you read the question, Svitlana?
I read the question, what is first, and I actually, I think Anna is a rather practitioner, not a theoretical person. Yes, I also think that it's just in order to create the mutual understanding, just before, like I'm doing that absolutely the same way. So if I approach a room or something, I do the chit chat and so on. And if I still see, I mean, like it takes you a while till you establish a relationship, till the people trust you and so on. So the first thing that I start with when negotiating, then I'll start with the given facts, and it helps because you know exactly that the fact is not going to be an issue or something, and addressing the facts, putting them aside and agreeing on them helps you to build up the trust, and also helps you to build up the road to the more difficult questions. So yes, if I understand it correctly, dealing with different values, I will deal definitely with the facts first, and then address the more difficult questions.
Or emotions, or whatever it is that it's, you got it right. Perfect. Facts first as opposed to what? Okay. Raghav is asking, finding and targeting the interests of a party is very subjective, and what we think may not be close to what their actual interests are. Basically, our assumed thing may not move things. Are there any general soft points how we can focus on in such cases? Well, absolutely right. You well picked up. It's very critical that you do think about the other side's interest before you start any negotiation, not just your own, but do focus on what the other side might want to get out, might have under their surface water level. But of course, you cannot know. Everything you will prepare will be a pure assumption. So what do you have to do? You have to go into the negotiation and ask questions. Of course, you cannot interrogate people because they will shut down and they will feel like, well, I'm not telling you anything. But you have to give and take a little bit. You have to share some information about your own interest and then ask them about theirs. People are usually very happy to find out you have a real interest in having a good solution for their problem. So if you manage to get across in the way you behave and the way you build trust and the way you speak, if you manage to get across that you really actually care to get them a good outcome as well, they will share what is really important to them. You've got to ask them, and you've got to prepare to share some information yourself. But yeah, never assume that you know what it is, because typically we do not. We always think we know what it is, but usually that is a wrong assumption. So always go in and double check.
I think that's it.
Do we have anything else? Did we miss anything in the middle? Anything that we over scrolled? Any last questions? I think we've covered everything.
I have the feeling too. If there are some unanswered questions, just shoot
us an email or check back. Hi, Kenat. How do you build trust if there's a court case going on in the background and the negotiation does not go as planned? The parties will aware to court process. So you mean you've stalled the court case and now you are negotiating? How do you build trust then? If that's what you're asking, that I don't see that as any different than not having a court case in the back. Of course, trust is already shaken because you already know that we are both seeing each other in court. It It can be helpful because it can give you a position of power to have a court case in the back, because sometimes it takes a court case to get the other side to come to the negotiation table, because they won't take you serious until you've shown, look, I really mean it, we need to talk about this. So sometimes it is necessary to do that. But of course, if there is a court case, there is less trust between the parties. So having a mediator is always a good idea. Having someone who facilitates the negotiation is a good idea. And other than that, you just gotta do the same thing you're doing in every negotiation about building trust, just as much of it as you can. Like, you've got to show willingness to really resolve this. You got to be honest. You got to ask questions, share information, create a personal connection. Everything you would always do in a negotiation is now extra important to do extra much of that if you already have a certain level of distrust built into the relationship. It's a higher level of difficulty, but most conflicts have one reason or the other why people are already distrusting each other. So these are the standard techniques. Issue being that you won't be willing to take back the course until most of your interests are met. That you don't take back the lawsuit, basically, unless you get everything. Or won't go back to the law court. Svitlana, any thoughts from your side?
Yes, I got to wonder what is the reason. I mean, I'm looking for the interest of the question of Kanat. It sounds like Kanat is in the middle of a difficult negotiation with the client, and there is some dispute going on, and it feels like there is some intimidation by having this dispute on the table. And yeah, I can just say exactly the same what you did, and assure him that a dispute doesn't make any difference to your practice at all, because I mean, in the end, we're all dealing with dispute. We all deal with the problems. They don't call us just because they like us or something. It's they call us when we need it, and it's usually the case that you have big disputes behind. And I think in the practice, what I've seen, the best lawyers were still able to go and drink a beer or whatever it was, a coffee, even though they were arguing with each other like lions 10 minutes before in the court. So again, maybe separating people from problems, and it's a client in front of you, and you're dealing with the problems. It's part of a job, but not spilling, do not spill the emotion to the client. Just separate them all, and you'll be fine.
If possible, yeah. I like Nikhil's comment saying there is a reason you're negotiating. That's a very good point. If you are taking this out of court, stalling it, and having a negotiation, then there is some reason. You remember the two icebergs Svitlana showed you where there's a little overlapping triangle. That's the reason you sit at this table and you negotiate, and you can stress that and maybe mention, look, we're both here because it doesn't make sense for either of us to be stuck in court. It doesn't make sense for either of us to drag this on for years. So you can also, it might help to reality check with the other side and remind them of the fact that, look, if we go back to court with this, we're looking at 5 years, we're looking at 10 years, we're looking at, depends on your jurisdiction, 15 years. So helping people along with some reality check of what is our plan B if we don't get this resolved can sometimes really help move things along. Okay, fantastic. Well, then thank you so much, everyone. We will run another session next week. We'll be talking about how negotiation skills and the way you use them with your clients influences client satisfaction. We'll show you some interesting research on that. So especially for those of you who are already practicing and already working with clients, that should be a very interesting input to your daily work that we often discuss with lawyers. Until then, thank you so much, Svitlana, for running the webinar. Thank you everyone for joining. I wish you a wonderful weekend. Stay safe, everyone. Stay inside. We'll stick this out together. Try some new negotiation skills on your family members, and we'll see you again, hopefully next week. Take care, everyone.
Take care. Thank you.